Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of Corporate Law Updates by Corporate Law Journal. This is Akanksha Pandey, and today we'll be discussing some latest updates by RBI, SEBI, and MCA. Now, let's start this session by discussing last week updates by RBI. RBI has invited comments from Journal Public over draft framework for recognition of a self-regulatory organization for payment system operators. Now, as the number of payment system providers are increasing day by day, therefore, in the interest of regulatory resources and to develop industry standards for pricing practices, customer protection, and grievance redressal mechanism, a self-regulatory organization, that is an SRO, is being proposed by RBI. Now, this SRO will be a non-governmental organization that sets and enforces rules and standards relating to conduct of entities in this particular industry. Now, as far as the eligibility for being recognized as an SRO by RBI, the SRO will have to be a non-profit organization. Any group of PSO, that is payment system operator, that is desirous of being recognized as an SRO shall have its member a majority of the industry segment it seeks to represent. The SRO shall be professionally managed and shall have adequate infrastructure. This SRO will also have memorandum and bylaws which shall provide manner of functioning of the governing body and the manner of admission of any new member. RBI will reserve right to clear appointment of important positions in the governing body of the SRO. Now, this SRO will have very specific functions. The recognized SRO shall serve as a two-way communication channel between its member and the Reserve Bank. It will set minimum industry benchmark and standards. It will also establish a uniform grievance redressal and a dispute management framework. It will investigate any matter referred by RBI. It will provide any data or information that is being sought by RBI. Lastly, it will abide by any directions which are being issued by RBI. Now, moving on to some latest updates by SEBI. SEBI has released a correspondence to the Master Circular on Depositories dated October 25, 2019, which was released regarding preservation of records. Now, this circular will be applicable to all depositories. Now, as per the terms of Regulation 54 and 66 of SEBI Depositories and Participant Regulations 2018, the depositories and the depository participants are required to preserve the records and the documents for a minimum period of 8 years. But as per the section 4.6 subclause 1 of the Master Circular on Depositories, the depositories and the depository participants are required to preserve these records and documents for a minimum period of 5 years. Now, in order to align these two provisions, SEBI has replaced section 4.6 subclause 1 of the Master Circular. Now it states that depositories and the depository participants are required to preserve the records and the documents for a minimum period of 8 years. SEBI has also advised the depositories to make amendments to their relevant bylaws, rules, and regulations for the implementation of the above decision. It also advises them to disseminate provisions of the circular on their website. They have to communicate SEBI the status of the implementation of the provisions of the circular through their monthly development report. On 18th of August, SEBI invited the comments of the public on its new format of the Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report. This report contains certain non-financial disclosure clauses such as the environmental, social, and governance aspects. This will be applicable to the top 1,000 listed entities on the basis of market capitalization. The objective of this report is to enable the entities to engage with their stakeholders on various other non-financial aspects by reporting the social governance and environmental perspectives of the specific listed entities. These comments have to be sent latest by 18th September 2020. On 21st August, SEBI released a circular which will be applicable to all recognized stock exchanges, depositories, and clearing corporations, including those in international financial services centers, and all registered intermediaries, including those in international financial services centers. Now, according to this circular, it is decided to streamline the operations of the IFSC and to amend the provisions of the aforesaid guidelines by incorporating a new clause, that is 8 subclause 3. Now, clause 8 subclause 3 reads as follows. An entity based in India or in foreign jurisdiction may provide financial services in the IFSC, subject to the compliance with the applicable regulatory framework or the guidelines for such financial services as specified by the board from time to time. On 21st August, SEBI released another circular regarding amendment to the SEBI International Financial Services Guidelines 2015. Now, this circular will be applicable to all recognized stock exchanges in the international financial services centers. On the basis of consultation with the stakeholders, it was decided to streamline the operations of IFSC. Clause 19 of the SEBI IFSC guidelines is being amended to read as follows. The entities issuing and/or listing their debt securities in the IFSC shall prepare the statement of accounts in accordance with the IFRS or the USGAP or IND-AS or the accounting standards as applicable to them in their place of incorporation. In case an entity does not prepare its statement of the accounts in accordance with the above mentioned standards, a quantitative summary of significant differences between the National Accounting Standards and IFRS shall be prepared by such entity and incorporated in the relevant disclosure documents to be filed with the exchange. However, if the issue is targeted to institutional investors, the quantitative summary of significant differences is not required, and a statement of differences between local accounting standards and the above mentioned accounting standards would suffice. The institutional investor also needs to be provided with a disclaimer that the issuer has not quantified the effect of applying IFRS or the USGAP or the IND-AS to its financial information, and the investor has the right to make its judgment on the basis of the financial information accessed. Now, moving on to some latest updates by MCA. The National Financial Reporting Authority (NFRA) has issued the audit quality report of the statutory audit for the year 2017 to 2018 of IL&FS Financial Services Limited. The statutory auditor for this engagement was BSR and Associates. It was concluded by NFRA that the appointment of BSR as the statutory auditors of IFIN was ab initio illegal and void, and that BSR did not have adequate justification for issuing the audit report asserting that the audit was conducted in accordance with the standards of auditing. Further, NFRA found that the IT processes or platforms used by BSR have deficiencies that are systematic and structural in nature. Now, the NFRA will examine whether disciplinary proceedings need to be initiated in connection with the Audit Quality Review Report under Section 132 Subclause 4 of the Companies Act 2013. Now, moving on to our next update. The government soon plans to release a single e-compliance window, for which MCA has initiated discussions with RBI, SEBI, and the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade on the possibility of creating a single platform or compliance forms with the common data sources. Now, the objective of this single platform is to integrate databases of the MCA and other bodies to bring down duplication in filing. Now, this will help in ease of doing business and will therefore attract foreign investors. Companies at present have to make multiple filings. Different regulators have different requirements and the formats for submission of data. Therefore, once the common platform is in place, the companies can file all their data in one place and the regulators can get their data from one source. Now, moving on to our last update for this session. Due to the current ongoing pandemic, chartered accountants and company secretaries have requested MCA for a no-action stance on unlisted companies for delayed compliance of Companies Act provisions regarding annual general meeting and financial reporting requirements. As per the Act, an additional fee of Rs 200 per day is levied on a company and its directors are prosecuted if the company fails to hold their general body meeting as per the law. A company needs to hold an AGM within 6 months from the closure of its financial year. They can get an extension up to 3 months given an application to the registrar of the companies. Now, even though some large corporates have been able to meet these deadlines by use of cloud technologies and virtual AGMs, still the mid to small size companies will not be able to hold their AGMs by September 30th due to the large gathering restrictions and travel restrictions because of the COVID-19 situation. Now, initially, MCA had issued a circular on April 21st, which allowed the companies whose financial year ended on December 31st, 2019, to hold their AGMs within a period of 9 months. But it made no reference to the companies whose financial year ended on March 31st, 2020. Now, although the MCA circular dated August 17, 2020, advised the ROC to liberally allow the extension to hold AGM, but an application by more than 10 lakh companies, followed by an equal number of replies by ROC, is a massive waste of national resources and time. Which is why close communication is being made with advisors and industry bodies so that they can understand the client's need and respond proactively. That is it for today's episode, guys. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and hope to see you soon in next episode with more latest updates from the corporate world.